complementarianism,
right.
where we believe that men and women have different functions and roles according to their gender that complement each other.
Okay.
And that's how we achieve that optimal functionality I talked about.
Okay.
So as a part of that concept of being complementarians to each other, or complementary to each other, is that we have this idea of dominion, which is the ability or the rights and responsibilities of stewardship that come with being a man in these different spaces that God has defined for us in our existence, such as our families,
right.
such as our homes, such as our churches.
Right.
A lot of people hear that word and they think, oh, that means that you're in charge and that you're the boss.
Some people hear dominating.
Exactly, hear dominating. And that's probably not the right context.
Okay.
In Christianity, Jesus introduced a concept called servant leadership.
Okay.
Where instead of you ruling top down, you're actually ruled bottom up.
Oh, okay.
Where I serve you with my responsibilities and the leadership that I've been invested with.
Okay.
Instead of me ruling over you and having you serve me. So to be dominant or to have dominion, that's not a nasty word in Christianity, because that means that I'm actually going to serve the people that I'm actually ruling over.
So dominion could be understood for some people who just not hearing this.
Yeah.
It could be understood as a responsibility.
That's it. That's really
rather
what it
than being in charge of someone.
Exactly. It's responsibility.
Okay.
You're responsible for a lot. That's all that means when it says you have dominance. That means you're responsible for a lot, because where there's responsibility or control, if you will, then there's responsibility. Okay. And that's like I said, I know I may ruffle some feathers, but we're talking about manhood, so I'm giving you my foundation of how I define my manhood.
And see that, and one of the things on the show, and True, I want you to chime in. One thing about manhood, we talk about this a lot, and we have to repeat it because a lot of people may not understand the whole purpose of the show or the purpose of the conversation. Because manhood has to be discussed, because we think in a way it has been misused.
Yeah, exactly.
It has been to an extent perverted. Like we really don't know. It's people have put their version of manhood and called it manhood.
Exactly.
Where we discussed a couple of weeks ago that manhood is very personal.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's not necessarily one of those cookie cutter, throw an umbrella of manhood and everybody's supposed to fit this.
No.
It has different aspects of it, and a lot of people have different growth stages in manhood. So appreciate you giving us your understanding so far on dominion. True, what you got to say about it?
I want to say two things. One, about the original question you asked me with dominion.
Right.
For me, it kind of comes from, and I've said before, I'm not really a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person. But it does come from a Christian mentality. How I understand it to a certain extent is you have control over your life. You have control over who you are and your immediate life force and those things that, I call it your telephone booth. Those things that you can touch in your immediate, that come in contact with your immediate aura or whatever. So your power, your tongue has power. If you speak negatively, negative things that happen. If you speak positively, positive things that happen. That's dominion. Like, whether that's been explained to you like that or not, that's what it is. What you said about manhood and how people just kind of throw up this umbrella, I feel like that happens with a lot of things in context in society, where it's like, okay, we call this particular act sexist, just to throw something out there. Right? And then it's like, clearly, yeah, that's sexist, whatever. But then this other act that has all of this gray area happens, and we don't really know where to place it. It's like, throw it in the sexist bag. Yeah. It's sexist. You know what I mean? So, and that happens with a lot of things in life, period. Manhood being a strong example of that. For sure.
For sure. You got any response to that?
Well, I think that when you talk about, obviously, manhood, in topics like this, there has to be a foundational place that you work from.
Of course.
Because if you define it in terms of a cultural norm, then that changes depending on what culture you're in.
Right.
So if we believe that, which a lot of people believe that all these things are cultural definitions, then you're left up to the whims of whatever society and culture says at the moment.
Right.
So if we decide that manhood now becomes wearing pink hair, mumbling as we rap, that's what manhood is.
For sure. That right there has started so many cookout arguments. I've seen people literally put water on the coals because somebody played the wrong song, bro.
Yeah.
Straight up.
I'm in a hip hop argument right now. Right now, as we speak. Like every time my phone lights up, there's somebody responding to me about a hip hop argument.
That's real. That's real.
But to your point, if you don't have that foundation of defining what these things come from and these things mean, then you're going to always have these questions about what are these things.
For sure.
And that's why you see people expressing it in different ways. And some of these ways, while they may be creative, while they may be individualistic, they don't necessarily lend us to having successful societies and successful families.
Okay.
And one of the things I would just kind of respond to True's statement about dominion, even though he says he's not necessarily religious, he's basing that statement off of biblical bits of truth that he agrees with.
Okay.
So you obviously have some foundation that you're drawing something from, that you as you shape your own view. So everybody has to kind of go through that, and that's where I think that even though it is an individual expression, because one, you serve different people with your manhood.
Right.
So the people you interact with
totally two different people.
Exactly, they're totally different groups of people. So my expression of manhood may not work in that space, but at the same time, the general idea of me trying to take care of my business, like you talked about, the things that I have influence over in that phone booth, those are things that are going to be common across all men that are actually aspiring to be men.
Okay. Now, True, you mentioned hip hop, right? You mentioned you were going over a conversation, and ain't gonna lie to you,
right
man.
Now, like,
the most, I'm not gonna lie to you. I think out of respect for hip hop, it has to be passionate. I think because the history of hip hop is so multifaceted, but it's also specific. I think having a really euphoric conversation about hip hop, man, somebody's lying.
What the basis of that particular argument is. It started off about ghostwriters and.
So and see, as an artist, you see, I'm not a hip hop artist. I'm a comedic artist. So and I know how it is when people write other folks' jokes. Yeah. Right.
But see, that's what turned the whole argument upside down, because I was like, I'm not really mad at dudes that get ghostwriters.
Right. But it's a script.
Yeah, I feel like this is how I feel, and I don't want to draw off.
No, it's good. No, this is the coaching conversation.
This is coaching
straight up.
But this is how I feel about it. I got homeboys that's from the street. They got real stories to tell. Like, some of these stories these dudes lying about, they really lived that. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody came through and shot up the bando and they should have died.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But they survived. I got a homeboy that got kidnapped. They was going to kill him. He broke out of the trunk.
Oh, wow.
And the ATF was watching the whole thing happen. They could have stopped it. But because he was under investigation, it was like, well, if he died, that's less work we got to do.
Wow.
Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like, I know dudes that really got these type of stories, but they might not know how to tell their story and structure a song. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
So I can believe, because I know dudes personally like that there's other guys out there, other artists from New York or whatever, you know what I'm saying, that might have those real stories, but they just don't know how to construct a song. So it's like, okay, you go get somebody like a Talib Kweli or Corey Guns or somebody like that. Like, you can't tell me Corey Guns is signed to Young Money, because yes, he's talented, but he's not signed there to be a mainstream artist. He's signed to write for Nicki.
I got you.
Jay Mills is signed to write for Nicki.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is, man. Like,
He's part of
so
the machine.
I'm not necessarily upset with somebody getting a ghostwriter. Where I become upset at is, I do believe, like, in the sneaker world, they call people hype beasts, where it's like, you don't really love sneakers, you're just getting it to be a part of that cool club. You know what I mean? Yeah. I believe there are rappers that are hype beast. You're just in it for the hustle. You don't really care about the culture, whatever. But I also believe there are artists out there that they ghostwrite. And then we have a lot of greats. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but we have a lot of greats that stole a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what's Buddy name that was talking about what's the comedian name? The greatest comedian ever.
Richard Pryor?
There we go. What's the guy's name that was talking about Richard Pryor after he died?
Paul Mooney?
No, not Paul Mooney.
Oh, you talking about
No, you're not talking about
Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones.
Okay,
yeah.
Quincy
And he like, they asked him about Michael Jackson, and he immediately was like, he stole so much material.
Really?
And this is Mike we talking about.
This is Mike.
You know what I'm saying?
The king.
But
the greatest.
it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Right. So I'll put like this, and I want to ask, and I want to shift it to Jamison, because I want to build off of what you just mentioned. because you have a podcast. And I want to keep mentioning that because I'm very, very interested. I actually participated in it, and I had one of the best times of my life on his podcast, man, because it's very thought-provoking, but the way you have that conversation is very epic, and I want to get into that later on in the show. But when we're talking about hip-hop, manhood and hip-hop, I would love to let people hear, especially young people, hear us kind of have a healthy conversation about manhood and hip hop. So, let me propose a question based off what you said. I want you to respond to it first, and then if we got anything misconstrued, clean it up for us.
Gotcha.
All right. So, based on what I heard you say, is sometimes this is what I took from him, not what he said. This is what I took. That depending on how you verbalize a story, whether it's your story or a story, I think it has to have, hip-hop has a genuine and authentic mandatory level of respect a part of it, right? Hip-hop is more than just songs and beats and dancing. These are life stories that people are communicating. These are political aspects that people are communicating. And literally we have lost lives of what have been said in songs in our hip hop culture, right? So I get the severity from it. So I'm going to ask you, where do you see manhood in hip hop? Where did it start? What did you recognize about it? And where do you think it is now?
Okay. I think I'm going to tackle that in this context. Whether we want to admit it or not, manhood as a culture in hip hop is defined by what we see men do in hip hop.
Okay.
We may have aspirational ideas about what they should be doing and what we want to see from our artists and from our community around hip hop.
Correct.
Maybe more positive subject matter. Maybe more of a community or consciousness focus there. But at the end of the day, what they do as men is what they're expressing their manhood as. That's how they define their manhood. So I would like to see, obviously, it be better in terms of promoting more of a positive message.
Okay.
Because one of the problems we've got, to be honest, is that we have very impressionable people who this music is targeted to.
Right.
Hip hop isn't a music or a genre of music that is targeted to us as adults. It's targeted to children. It's targeted to kids.
Right.
So now you take a message that is very toxic in this context of talking about drug abuse, talking about misogyny of women, misogyny to women, not to mention this sort of rags to riches glamorization that's in there too. No one took the traditional route to success, right? Nobody went to school, nobody got a degree, nobody graduated, got a job, grinded out on the job, and nobody did that. Everybody was like, forget school, like this music is my life, and I'm gonna go about the hustle route to get there. All of that is bundled up into hip hop, and there's obviously examples of positive stuff in hip hop, but the majority of what you hear that gets a lot of publicity is this negative stuff. It's catered to the kids. So when you talk about defining manhood, it goes back to seeing those images of what these men are doing.
Correct.
And if you listen to some of the brothers who are rapping, they talk about being from fatherless homes. They talk about obviously their relationships with their mothers. All of these things are pathologies, I believe, that are expressed in art as well. Because art is a reflection of the culture as much as it defines the culture and reinforces the culture.
Right.
So all of these things we're seeing in terms of manhood come back from how these men are conducting themselves, how they treat women, obviously, how they see themselves and their bodies with the drug abuse and the criminality.
Right.
And they are defining manhood for us as these things because that's what we see men do in that culture.
Okay, so True, I want you to respond to what you just heard from that, and I want to kind of give a take on it based off what I feel about what you said. All right. First of all, what I took from what you said a little bit earlier was it at least in the right direction?
Yeah.
All right. So based on what you heard from both of our takes on it, what do you have to say?
This is gonna be kind of layered.
That's all right.
And I might ruffle some
The
feathers.
reason, no. Ain't no. First of all, this manhood ain't no feathers in here. It's like ain't number fur. Ain't number fur and beard. It's line mains and just regular stuff, man. So we cooling, man. So Ruffle fellas,
I'm gonna come at it again from, like I said, even though I consider myself a spiritual person, I do have a religious background.
For sure.
I move more towards spirituality, and I'm prefacing what I'm gonna say with this.
Gotcha.
I move more towards spirituality because I grew up. My grandma was Jehovah's Witness. My mother was Christian. My father was a 5% Muslim.
Right.
So being around this mix and seeing how
you truly got culture.
seeing how they spoke on each other in a negative sense when the other person wasn't around, it kind of turned me off from religion.
Yeah.
But I did agree with. I've been to Bible studies with Jehovah's Witnesses. I've been to Bible studies with Christians. I've sat down with Muslims. You know what I mean? And my consensus is it's all the same thing. It's just your perspective is different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, for instance, Muslims believe in Jesus the same way Christians believe in Jesus, but Muslims believe Jesus was a prophet. Christians believe Jesus was God's son. We're not going to go there. But I'm just putting that in the preface.
You could.
It gets heated.
Because I can't really speak on that on a deep level. But I'm just saying, I'm just using it as an example. But I'm going to preface it with what I'm about to say from a religious standpoint, only because I said earlier I was spiritual, so I don't want nobody to think I'm contradicting myself.
No, what do you think?
I see Satan, whose original name was Lucifer, when he was an angel. I don't really see him as just outright evil, how they paint that picture.
Okay.
I see him more so as the troubled child, and I feel as though God looks at him as the troubled child as well, because from my understanding of God, he has the power to destroy him if he so wished. But I feel as though somewhere deep in God's heart, he's kind of like let down, disappointed by his child rebelling against him, whatever. That's another story for another day. But I mention that because Lucifer was the angel of music. And when you look at a lot of the descriptions about Lucifer's personality and how he perceived mankind and this and the third, and how he's kind of elusive, aloof, whatever word you want to use to describe it. Okay. A lot of artists behave in the exact same manner.
Oh, wow.
No matter what genre you talking about. You know what I mean?
Never heard that perspective, dude.
It's like, how I feel about it is I relate to this evil character in a lot of ways, even though I might not carry around the malice.
But you understand the bad guy title and category.
I get it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I'm an artist. So I have a lot of those same kind of traits on a smaller scale. You know what I mean? And when I look at other artists, and when you're an artist and you're a comedian, so you've been in a house where you live with other comedians. You know what I mean? So
the disrespect is just amazing.
So living with a bunch of artists is like, on paper, that's a wonderful idea.
Man.
But in practice,
let somebody say it, man. I don't think that's funny. Dude, I've been writing this joke all night. And then one hand come up like this, bro. It's finna get on.
You know what I mean? So, moving along with that being said, I feel as though a lot of these artists are bestowed a certain amount of responsibility that, one, they're not ready for.
Right.
Two, they didn't really ask for. But it's like, on a moral scale, you gotta kind of hold yourself accountable, because it's like, that's the spotlight that you in.
Understood.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, you can't penalize them for expressing their truth, expressing who they are, where they came from. You know what I mean? Like, I can't expect Boosie to be X, Y, and Z that I want Boosie to be. Boosie is Boosie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If anything, it falls on the parents heavily, not 100%, because when your kids are out in the world, they're out in the world. But it falls on the parents heavily to kind of filter a lot of that. You know what I mean? Like, when I grew up, I had friends that they had cups in the house with lines on it. And they wasn't allowed to fill their drink past that line on the cup.
Woo!
You know what I mean?
That's pressure.
Like,
that is pressure. Heavy-handed the kid with Kool-Aid in. I don't stop until it's on the counter.
I mean, I got a partner that never drank Kool-Aid in their life till they got to college.
Wow.
And I
am so sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's possible. It's just on you. How much do you want to police your kid?
Yeah, that's real.
How much do you really want to do your job?
He ain't got diabetes.
I don't want to put everything on the parents, but the major thing I did want to get to with that is, I feel as though, for one, we all know that hip hop is a young man's sport. That's
Right.
commonly said.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these, Lil Uzi is a child at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Rich the Kid, when Justin Bieber came on, you know what I'm saying? When Chris Brown first started getting hot, he a grown man now and he's stupid, but that's another conversation.
Right.
But the thing is, I feel as though these kids are working through themselves. Like, you look at somebody like a Lil Wayne.
Okay.
His story is the hip hop version of Michael Jackson.
Wow.
He never had a childhood.
Right.
So when you look at this grown man doing these things that he's doing, he's getting a lip ring, he's tatting his face up,
Right.
he's doing X, Y, Z. Y'all like, Wayne,
He got the
lost
glitter
his
glove.
mind. It's like when you really look at that man's life, like, he never had a childhood. Those impressionable years as a child, he was already signed to a record deal.
He was working full time
with Cash Money Records.
Yeah, straight up.
Grown men.
Yeah.
From the hood, from the street. Juvenile. We seen the first Juvenile video when he was all greased up. You know?
Yeah.
These was real hood street dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He was 12 years old, these dudes. Like,
Right.
So I feel as though it's easy to point the finger and judge when you sitting at the other table.
Understood.
And you looking at these quote unquote animals behave, how they behaving. But when you in that cage with them, you'll understand. Cat Williams, I'm gonna go to comedy since you're a comedian. Cat Williams made a joke on, what was it, Everyday Hustle, I think?
Yeah.
When he was talking about the lion in San Francisco. And he was like, you know,
Hell, I don't even want to be a lion anymore. I remember
yeah,
that.
like, you can't understand what it's like to be a lion
Yeah.
in a zoo.
Yeah.
You'll never understand what it's like being black in America. You know
Straight
what I mean?
up. He said roar. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember. So, but this is the thing I want to redirect to, because not redirect, but I want to add on to what you're saying, and then I want Jamison to chime in on it too, because what I hear both of you all saying is it just has to have some type of respect factor, not only for the individuals but for the culture as well.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime when respect is low, it's gonna come back.
Right there.
Anytime when respect is not necessarily honored, it's going to cause issues. Now, one thing that I want you to respond to, because I know do you work in the corporate sector? Let me ask you that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you work in the corporate sector, but you also are in tune with the culture, too.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to kind of understand you guys take on it, but I want to preface it by how I see what's happened to hip-hop. I found out in my years, my understanding of what has happened to hip-hop is hip-hop has had to explain itself, kind of like we as men have to explain ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to prove that we're innocent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've noticed that a lot of other genres, and I ain't even talking about skin color, I'm just talking about culture.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any other culture have to defend itself as much as hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just me. I can't say that as a fact.
That's another prerequisite of just being black. Black people always gotta explain.
Right, and that's what I want to know. Like, well, this is what I want you all to respond to. What I think I've seen so far. Mm-hmm. What I've seen has happened to hip hop. It has been ostracized. It has been attacked, and it has been made guilty. And what a lot of people don't understand is how much hip hop has been actually colonized first and corporatized.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. See, a lot of times when we say, "Hey, man, this message gets out more. This is being celebrated more," but then I start asking myself, who owns the publishing?
Exactly.
Who owns the marketing? Who owns the radio stations? Who owns all the internet outlets?
Exactly.
Who owns this stuff?
The
See,
infrastructure.
yeah, and I'm thinking, and so don't get me wrong. Yes, do you have to be responsible for the lyrics you create? Yes, but it's a lot of people that make garbage, and you'll never hear a peep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a lot of people who make, I mean, look at this, man. McDonald's is not Bon Appetit, but it's one on every corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you got to start asking yourself, it's not necessarily the quality of the food, it's who keep building these things.
Yeah.
Why is it in our face so much?
Yeah.
And if we keep having, reports about this ain't good for you, why do they keep building it? And who's keep building it? So if we're asking ourselves, all right, if some of the people who are not honoring the lyricism, because I grew up on Public Enemy, Rakim, Outkast, Goody Mob, people who actually put their lyrics in the CDs, so you can read the lyrics as you listening to the, so my respect for hip hop is on a specific level with curriculum. You know what I'm saying? I had a curriculum based hip hop where the artist said, no, you're not finna party to what I'm talking about. You're going to have to read this. You know what I'm saying? Because we out here kind of dying on a large scale. Yeah. So you read this, and when you see something, you listen, you go to your homeboys, and you have conversation about it. But I want you to elaborate on it because you're also in the corporate sector. You also are part of the culture, and you're very, very supportive of the culture. So I want you to elaborate on what's your take on the balancing act that you see hip hop, and not only just hip hop, any other aspects of our culture. And I say our meaning our, whoever's in there, not necessarily just skin tone, but the people, the soul, the spirit, the ethnicity, the artistic expression. When I say our, I'm talking about everybody who understands what those artistic expressions are.
Oh yeah,
you see what I'm saying? So go ahead and elaborate on that, please.
Well, I can take it from my perspective of my podcast, Culture and Conversations. Shameless plug.
Respect.
I can record crazy stuff. You know, I can do the lunch, the meal before lunch club stuff. Right. Not to throw shade at anybody, but I can have you come on my show, ask you a bunch of embarrassing questions, try to generate moments and clicks and all that clickbait stuff. Right. Because I know there's an appetite in people to see embarrassing stuff and see that type of stuff. Right. I could do that. But that's not what I choose to do with my platform.
Straight up.
Now, I'm not feeding myself off of my platform. I'm not doing it, making piles of money or trying to support my lifestyle with it. It's really, right now, just a labor of love. Right. If it turns into something where we're able to monetize it significantly, then that's great. But right now, I'm just putting out the best content I can put out. Right. Now, you take that perspective of creating art, because I think my podcast is art in a sense.
Of course.
And you compare it down to what we're talking about in hip-hop, that balancing act. People are trying to get on because they have need to get on. They come from intense poverty. They come from these backgrounds where they're trying to support themselves with their talent. And you've got people, like you said, who have gazillions of dollars by our standards, and they're waving in front of these guys telling them, hey, if you make an album about slapping women around and treating them crazy and doing all this other stuff, I'll give you $1 million bag for that. Where do you? It's hard to have integrity. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's hard to have integrity in moments when obviously you have extreme need and poverty, and somebody's giving you a way out of that. Because oftentimes what people hope for is that they can have integrity later on. The balancing act of us in terms of hip hop, I think this is a bigger problem we have in our community. Yes, there's racial scrutiny that comes unfairly because of the history we have in this country of being black and coming from slavery, and white people using slavery as a mechanism to launch into white supremacy to suppress and do all of these things, right? Our culture. But at the same time, we got to be careful about that scrutiny, separating that scrutiny and that nonsense from people wanting us to do better. Right. And I think sometimes that's the balancing act you're talking about, where we automatically assume that because if somebody says something judgmental about what we're doing, that it's coming from a place of racism, or it's coming from a place of they're not respecting the culture. Right. I'm sorry, I don't respect misogyny. I just can't get down with that. Okay. I can't respect selling dope and killing people in communities, because none of that's cool to me. Okay. Even the stuff I grew up seeing, I didn't see any cool crackheads. I didn't see anybody cool strung out on drugs. I saw one cool. You know what I'm saying?
That's just like, go ahead. He was a good reverse mentor.
He just didn't have enough money to be real. He just didn't have enough money. Like, I saw poor crackheads, so they didn't have enough money to right. I didn't see any of the cool stuff that people glamorize. Right. So for me, I come at it from that perspective of, no, I'm going to challenge the culture to do better, because I think it needs to do better.
Understood.
But at the same time, I don't judge. I don't demonize a person because, one, my faith perspective believes that people have the ability to be redeemed. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So I may challenge you to do better, but I'm gonna bear with you in grace and in love while you do better. Right. So I can appreciate, Quavo having a celebrity, flag football game that was like dope, and him giving back to his community. I can applaud that brother. I can champion that. I can share those posts. But at the same time, if he makes an album out here in left field talking about drinking lean and popping Percocets, nah, bro, that you can be better than that. Okay. And I understand that you were trying to have it kind of walk that edge, because the lean and Percocets is giving you the platform to do the celebrity flag football game that's helping your community. But at some point, as you continue to develop, I hope that everybody, not just him, but everybody in the culture of hip hop continues to aspire to get out of the negativity and devote themselves to the positivity.
I think what I'm seeing as well is, and what I try to humanize hip hop as much as I can.
Yeah.
I try to put the humanity in hip hop because sometimes, and I was talking to a good friend of mine earlier today, we put, and I say we loosely, not everybody, but I've heard people put unrealistic expectations on a reality that people are living. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So say, for instance, if a hip-hop artist is actually telling a story, because if you really look at it, one of the controversial and hypocritical, quote-unquote, artists, one of the best artists of all time, to me, is Tupac, right? He will build you up, and then he'll tear you down in the next song, right? Yeah. But then I started asking myself, what did the man see? You know what I'm saying? A lot of lives in hip-hop, or a lot of lives in our culture, are not consistent. Mm-hmm. We have good days and we have bad days. We make great decisions. We make bad decisions. Oh, yeah. And I think where I caught myself in judging hip hop, because I think when people hold hip hop to a standard, I don't think they're wrong. You see what I'm saying? When people say, little brother, you don't need to be rapping about that. Mm-hmm. I don't just disagree with them, but I do humanize the person that they're judging. You see what I'm saying? I look at both. I just give out respect. I don't give out grades. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that person may have a young son that was going around saying, well, my son was listening to you talk about Percocet and he almost OD'd the other day. Yeah. So now I got to respect his point of view. Yeah. Right? But then I go to the other person and he was like, yeah, I seen that the other day. I seen how people do this. Mm-hmm. I didn't sell any of it, but I see how people are popping a Molly or popping a Percocet just to get the party going and this, that, and the other. Well, I'm talking about it. I'm not necessarily telling people to do it, but I am responsible for some of the things that I'm saying, right? Yeah. So I will say this. I would say let's try something real quick just for the sake of the conversation. Let's try to police, and I say police on purpose. Let's try to police another artistic expression or another culture, all right? Let's look at scary movies. You know what I'm saying? Where they're actually not rhyming it, they're saying it and showing it. Yeah. Right?
Here's how you kill someone.
And see, this is the thing with me. People that, our culture, we don't necessarily mass produce scary movies. And it's scientifically shown that when you have visual images, they stick in the brain really, real vividly. And a lot of people have mimicked scenes they've seen in movies more than they mimic people who had verses in hip-hop songs. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And so this is what I'm looking at where manhood is. When we just talked about it at the very beginning of the show, how we police manhood for certain people and saying we put this broad stroke and holding certain cultures accountable for being the standard when the whole world is kind of hypocritical and it can be confusing. The reason why I'm saying this, I'm thinking about the young person that may be listening, a young man or a young woman between the ages of 9 and 19 who's getting all these specific messages and they're having to defend hip-hop, and hip-hop is conveniently contributed by people that look like them, right? But it's not corporatized by people that look like them. So yeah, we may have negative messages, but we don't mass produce our negativity. No. And I think that's where I'm trying to go, and I want you to respond to it. And I want you to ask some, some questions based off how you've been judged as a hip hop artist and where the corporate and culture kind of clash, right? Yeah. So I wanted to ask you this, man, so say for instance, if we in a whole nother artistic expression, where we just start talking about scary movies, where mass murders happen, all these different types of things. As a corporate America, say for instance, if we were mass producing scary movies, like horror movies, and in our culture, we've been doing scary movies, but they've been funny. Sure. They made fun of the horrible stuff that we've seen in some of these movies. Scared, yeah. How would you police that artistic expression, scary movies?
I think I look at it in terms of, I think I would look at it the same way. Okay. If our people were idolizing scary movies and the lifestyle that the movie presented of someone being a serial killer, and we're rooting for that serial killer, and now you got kids going to school trying to create these scenarios that they can get on from. Well, I'm gonna go around and be the next serial killer. I think that's I would definitely have the same reaction. I'd be consistent with it because I see what you're saying, and I think that's one of the things where, as people and as a culture, especially as Black folk, speaking from the African American perspective, we got to understand where this money's coming from.
Right.
And the money isn't coming from people who look like us.
Straight up.
It's coming from people who don't look like us. So they are putting out the money. They're putting their money into the music. And one thing people have to be real about is when you have a certain level of wealth, then certain consequences don't befall you the same way they befall me.
That is so true.
So you know if I'm rich and I'm funding the creation of this hip hop music or these scary movies we're talking about,
right?
And this community over here is going out emulating it because they're thinking that's cool, that's glamorized. The heroes we see are doing these things. Now that's a problem because the people over here, they got other options. They can go to school to be lawyers. They can go to school to be doctors. They grew up in a completely different socioeconomic strata.
Right.
And we got our people over here though. We said because part of the problem is we idolize the entertainer. And we uphold them. So we say now so we inherently say that, hey, I want you to be like this person, but I also want you to do what, and inherent in that is like saying that what they did was okay. You know, if you tell me that, okay, Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, then I'm inherently saying that whatever Michael Jordan did to become the greatest basketball player of all time is okay.
The work ethic.
Or just the fact that he shot, 1,000 jump shots every day or whatever he did. I'm saying if you want to be successful like Michael Jordan, you got to do what Michael Jordan did. It's cool, So we emulate the success of these people because they're exemplars of what success in our community looks like, at least what we're told it looks like. And then that's what gives you the cosign of going out here and doing the bad behavior. So you have to be consistent. I think that's a great point. Take it off of hip hop and talk about scary movies, but
and
it goes back to us trying to challenge our people culturally to do it better.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and True, I want you to respond to what you about to hear me say. Like, I see us not necessarily just dogging out hip hop, but it looks like we are. If I see my little brother or my little sister doing something that, hey man, you don't need to do that. It's me, not necessarily only getting on him, but that ain't us. That ain't our stuff. That's the reason why we don't go back and forth and hold other people accountable, because it ain't ours.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Yeah. I just think where we have become, it's a difference between holding to a standard and criticizing to death. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where I know I want to uplift you to a certain thing. Hey, I have expectations. This is what you can do. But I see us holding us to a unrealistic standard of consistency across the board. Nothing is positive all the time.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? And when we start talking about art, we're talking about artistic expression where you can't weigh it, you can't measure it, you can't count it, you can't control it. You see what I'm saying? So when we start thinking about the whole world and how we can't control all the actions of all people on the planet, how are we going to control how people express themselves? Right? So, True, what you got to say about that?
One, I do feel like, and I try to stay away from this for a long time, but it's evident at this point. I do feel as though street rappers, trap rappers now, it's the new crack. Like when they move crack into the neighborhood. I do feel as though that is somewhat true. Street rappers will get a deal like that nowadays.
And trap is a word, and you don't necessarily have to ever work in the trap, but now you're a trap artist.
Yeah.
It's a genre.
You can be on a trap beat and you're a trap artist.
Yeah, trap has become a beat, not someone selling on the street. Trap is a mindset now.
So on the other end of that spectrum, I don't think Dylan Roof was listening to NWA.
That's what I'm saying.
No.
And I don't think them boys, when in Columbine, listening to Mini Men by 50 Cent.
Right.
I don't feel as though some of the most heinous things that have happened in this country, you can't blame hip hop for it.
Right.
But that's how they carry on about hip hop. They'll carry on about it on Fox News, national news.
Right.
They'll carry on about how hip hop is
this
and that, and it's destroying this and that, and look at Chicago. That's always the scapegoat. Look at Chicago. You know what I mean? But I just think that hip hop gets demonized for like you said, just criticizing it to death.
Right.
When it's really like, when you look at, first of all, like I said, going back to that lion in that cage versus with that tiger in that cage versus the tiger in the wild. When you don't live in them environments, I'm from the hood, but I'm not from Chicago.
Right.
I don't know how, like, they call that a war zone.
Yeah,
people from Chicago, they call it drill noise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
They consider that like being in Iraq. They call it Chirac. You know what I mean? Like, they consider that being in Iraq, like it's a constant war zone. You know what I mean? Like, when you live in a poverty-stricken area like Flint, Michigan.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Or anywhere in Detroit, like the poverty-stricken areas of Detroit, like those areas, it's different in the wards of New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? In Compton, whatever. Like, you can't judge somebody from your seat all the way over there, like, oh, well, I'm from the hood and I came from da-da-da-da. Like, you could use Richard Sherman as he came from Compton. He went to an Ivy League school.
A beast.
He graduated with a 4.0.
Yeah.
The boy he one of the best corners in the league.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's one in a million. That's literally Nipsey Hussle. You know who Nipsey is, right?
Yeah.
Just dropped the tape.
Heard it's a bump. I heard it's a beast too.
And one of the last things he said in one of the songs, it was like one of the last couple bars. He was like, he said something about everything that he done. He was like, it's almost impossible. Matter of fact, it's like a lottery ticket.
Right.
That's why I gotta talk a lot of, you know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause that's literally what it is.
Right.
He's a rolling 60s crip.
Okay.
Like, that was born into it, basically.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Game was born into the gang life.
Right.
His mother was a crip.
Correct.
His mother was a Hoover crip. You know what I'm saying? And before he was born, his brother was a blood. So it was like he was born in a situation that was already impossible for him. And then on top of that, you black, so you're born in a hole anyway.
Right.
Without that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't really feel like you can point your finger at somebody when you don't really know the depth of their situation, and you don't even know if you was in their shoes, would you have survived that? Would you have made it out? Would you have beat the odds?
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
I think the only point of clarity I would offer to that statement you made is that it's a difference between me criticizing a person for their origin story versus me criticizing them telling their origin story and trying to make money off of it.
Correct.
So, and then that's even a different story than glamorizing it as a person receiving their art. You know?
They monetize someone's life.
Yeah, my thing is, I think all art can be expressed, but the value assessment of what I put on that person's art, I think that's the conversation.
Okay.
How much, if you had, for instance, if your little daughter hypothetically drew a picture and she's like 5, she drew a little stick figure.
Right.
You might frame that and put that up at your desk at work.
Right.
It's only valuable to you because she means something to you.
Understood.
However, you can take that to auction and say, hey, let me sell that for $1 million because nobody's gonna buy it.
Okay.
So it goes back to what we place value on. And I think that's my criticism as someone who's looks at hip hop. I'm not critical of hip hop. I'm critical of our people being receptive to some of the messaging of hip hop.
That's what I was. Yeah, thank you.
So hip hop, I think the artist is fine telling their story, telling their narrative, talking about where they come from.
That's what you go support.
But I think it's what I support with my dollar.
Yeah.
Because and at the same time, I'm old enough where I can contextualize a lot of this stuff as truly entertainment.
Yeah.
For instance, I look at all of hip hop as wrestling. I do.
Hilarious.
I don't look at it as like, okay, this is an autobiographical narrative about a Crip who grew up in South Central LA. I could care less about Nipsey's upbringing, all that gangbanging stuff. I don't care anything about that. But I bought his album because it's hot.
Right.
Right. And I can rock with Victory Lap. You know what I'm saying? Bumping it in the car.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not an impressionable.
Right. A developing mind.
Exactly. Where I'm out here like, you know what? I can go to Georgia Southern. Or I can go over here and hang out with the Crips and try to get this bomb off.
Right.
Right. Like I'm not at that point because I've made that decision. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I don't.
But to your point, let me give this part about Dylan Roof. You said something about Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof, yes, he wasn't listening to hip hop when he went and shot at church. But the stuff Dylan Roof was listening to, that stuff is worthy of the same criticism, if not more so, than what hip hop is worthy.
Right.
We give hip hop. It needs to be critiqued. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You good.
And so I want to, and when you finish that, we're going to go into your show because I want to make sure that we understand what your show is. And I want you to promote your show and tell us your journey of your show of Culture and Conversation.
Sure,
respond to that, and then we're going to get right into that.
I get the whole, once you move along, it's like, all right, you told this story a million times, whatever. I understand that, like, growth. And what we saw with T.I.'s paper trail, and then he went right back to what he was doing beforehand, which I personally didn't understand myself at the paper trail. I thought it was going carve a new lane.
Yeah, Trouble Man.
Yeah. He immediately came back.
But I respect Trouble Man so much. I love it.
But I do feel as though, like, I get that the minds are impressionable, but I feel like hip hop has grown so much part of black culture. Hip hop is not black culture.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a part of hip hop if you choose not to be just because you're black. You don't have to be.
Right.
I mean, you look at somebody like Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith.
Yeah.
You look at him like he doesn't perform hip hop in the same manner that
it's alternative.
He doesn't even have that same mindset because he didn't come from that. He's already rich. You know what I mean? He's already privileged. And I'm not saying that negatively.
That's his circumstance.
Yeah.
Just like Nipsey, he couldn't. It's certain things in his upbringing he didn't choose.
I mean,
just
he
like
said that
Jay.
in the album too. On track 1, he was like, "If you ain't never been in these streets, dealt with the up and down, going through the motions, dealt with the up and downs like a seesaw, like I could never relate to you. Why would I want to listen to your CD? You know what I mean? Like that's, and I feel that.
That's deep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but I think that is a core problem when it comes to black people as a whole. Where, like you said, your issue is with it being impressionable upon your people and what they receive from it. But I think that recognize hip hop as, well, if you're black, you got to be a part of this. Otherwise, you lose your black card. But it's a subgenre. I mean, not subgenre. It's a subculture of black culture.
Yeah,
it's not black culture.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't understand, and we want to get right into culture and conversations, is that the origin and the genesis of hip hop came out of young blooded teenagers, if I'm not mistaken. They were young, or at least early 20s. I know teenage to early 20s, right? If I'm not mistaken. So it is a young culture. Not necessarily just a race, not necessarily a skin tone, but it is a culture of the youth. And if you really think about it, how people hold youth to a certain standard,
especially young artists,
right? So I think it's also a young type of scrutiny that goes along with it. Even when you get to some of the artists that I grew up listening to, who said way more horrible stuff that I'm hearing now, and some of my favorite artists. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a hypocrite. But some of the stuff that they're criticizing is some of the same stuff that they did in the older OGs when they were young, was saying the exact same thing about him. So I'm seeing an age culture in hip hop too. You know, what a lot of people are trying to grade what they're hearing and all this other good stuff. So, but this is what I want you to do, because we're going to try to close the show in the next 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
What I want you to do is I want you to take us on a journey of how did you get to the point where you started your own podcast.
Sure.
Culture and Conversations. What's the purpose behind it? What is the strategy behind it, and where you see it going? So please take us away.
So Culture and Conversations evolved out of my interactions with people on social media.
Okay.
I have a friends list on Facebook that I routinely post all types of interesting, thought-provoking, funny, silly, comedic content to.
For sure.
And people saw my persona and they said, you should turn that into a podcast.
Right.
I had several friends on the timeline say, man, you should create a podcast.
Right.
And I said, well, maybe people sometimes hype you up.
Right.
And, but I said, okay, I'll give it some thought.
Yeah, somebody told me I should run track and field.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So
couple of L's. Go ahead,
man. Troubles.
Shot put saved.
I used to blame my asthma when I was just fat.
Breathing issues.
But no, I came up with this concept of a show called Culture and Conversations because I said that's what I speak about.
Right.
I talk about culture on my Facebook timeline, and I also talk about I have conversations with people.
Right.
And I felt like I was already recording a lot of content through the work I do at the church. And I said, well, maybe I can leverage some of those conversational skills and those skills I developed as a teacher at my church to help bring a unique, fresh perspective to the podcast space. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's a core value of my podcast is that I don't embarrass people. So I'm not chasing clickbait.
Yeah, that's true.
If you come on my podcast and you have something you don't want to talk about, I'll edit it out. If I ask you a question you don't want to talk about, I'll edit it out.
Straight up.
And the reason why is because I feel like part of what we've lost in our culture is that we've lost a reverence for people trying to actually do amazing stuff.
Right.
So instead of me highlighting your comedy, I'm up here trying to make a fool out of you.
I get it.
And
that attacking podcast.
Exactly. Like I said, some people make a living doing that. That's just not me.
Right.
It's a slower growth trajectory doing it that way.
Right.
Because it's heartwarming content.
Right.
And I don't know if people necessarily care about having their hearts warmed. But that's cool because I'm not worried about trying to get a bunch of eyeballs as fast as possible.
Right,
so, in terms of the strategy, we took him into developing music and wanting to produce music.
Correct.
What's driving that part of his life that he's pursuing.
Right.
And I feel like that's interesting because what about the next generation who wants to come along and do the same thing? How would they get that information from you? You see what I'm saying? So if we put that all together on the Culture and Conversations podcast, then it creates what I call tribal knowledge that gives us an archive to go back to listen to that we can draw upon the wisdom of people who come before us.
Straight up.
Also, I tell people, I say I am a Christian, but it's not a Christian podcast.
Right.
It's just a podcast by a Christian.
Yeah.
I'm a black man, but it's not a black podcast.
Yeah.
It's a podcast by a black man.
You're more than your description.
Exactly. So, I want to get people from all walks of life to invest a few minutes of their time to help me tell their story.
Right.
And in the process, people learn about me, people learn about themselves, surprisingly. Correct. And it's just been a great experience, man.
Most definitely.
So yeah, if you want to definitely check out Culture and Conversations, everything Culture and Conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and there's a website, cultureandconversations.com, where you can actually listen to episodes. I've had some great stories. I've had friends share stuff about how God blessed them to have children when the doctors said it was impossible.
Right.
We're dropping that episode this week.
That's good.
So you'll have a chance to hear that. I've had friends also share stuff about how they got pregnant when they were in high school and they had to make a decision if they want to keep their son. And they made a decision to keep their son, and now he's being recruited nationally to play football. And apparently Georgia Southern doesn't know his name, but I hope Georgia Southern goes and actually recruits his brother because he's really talented.
No, for sure. So,
shameless plug for Tavion Gray. So
that's tight.
do make sure to make that happen because I write checks to Georgia Southern. I'm just saying. But,
yeah, you do right. I've seen the checks. that ain't them grandmama birthday checks when it's $5 either. That man be signing checks.
But I just want to promote people's, man. Just promote the goodness in people. Give people an opportunity. I'm not so big where in my mind where I can't talk to anybody, but I just tell those kind of stories. So she had that decision to make, obviously, and 16 years later, she's at a point where she can reflect on that decision, the consequences of that, and she's seeing that although her life obviously changed, that when she made that decision, it gave him an opportunity to blossom and turn into this guy who's going to have a chance to pursue possibly a career playing professional football one day.
Straight up.
So it's just those types of heartwarming stories. But also, there's some silliness on there too, where I have conversations talking about, all types of stuff, man. Where maybe like for instance, I had a conversation talking with a buddy about my online dating experiences I've had and how I got.
Online dating has to be a journey in itself.
Well, I told a story about how I got frogged. And I call that fraud instead of
catfish.
Reverse catfish.
Reverse catfish?
Yeah.
Please explain.
Yeah, she was a beautiful woman on the pictures. But she was like, I give her like a 7 out of 10. But when she showed up to the date, she was like a 10. And I said,
whoa.
And I said, you're not the person in your pictures. And
you dogfished me.
Yeah, she admitted that she wasn't the person in her pictures, and now I had a moral conundrum, right? What do I do with the hot chick who's actually on the date? Who's hotter than the chick I thought I was actually going to go out with, right? So these are some of the funny stories that you'll hear on the Culture and Conversations podcast.
I ain't gonna lie, that's hilarious.
And it was and then those are the things I talk about from my life, and that would be something that would make it on the Facebook just like anything else. So
that's like trying to date the chick you went to high school with, and like, I don't know, Rihanna pop up with like, it's me, I didn't want you to know.
Exactly.
And now you got to be like, all right, I'm finna act like, first of all, you're a liar.
Exactly. You lied to me.
You lied to me. All right. So let me ask you this. How have you grown as an individual in this process?
I think I've just learned so much from my guests, Chris. Okay. I think that's the biggest thing. Like moments where people have shared real wisdom with me. I think your episode is one of my favorite episodes. Obviously, I'm not just saying that.
That episode was off the chain.
Yeah, you just share real wisdom and real perspective about how you use comedy to combat a lot of the things that you were encountering in life.
Staying out of jail.
It's like staying out of jail, dealing with anger issues, fitting into social circles, penetrating, these different cultures you found yourself a part of. And these are the types of things I learned from the experience. But also, too, talking to people who have diverse perspectives. I had an episode where one of the guests, she had over $100,000 worth of plastic surgery done. And
wow.
She's a beautiful woman, but obviously I had a perspective about plastic surgery that I brought to the table. But I learned how to dialogue with her without making her feel judged, without making her feel as if I was trying to slant the interview to attack her.
100,000.
Yeah, it looks like it too, bro. So I'm just saying,
that's a lot of receipts.
But what you just go take a look at. I'm not telling you, I'm not gonna shout her Instagram out. But I'll shout out my podcast. I'm shouting out my podcast.
Oh yeah,
so you go
there you go. Because people gonna bypass it like, I want to see this 100 stacks.
Episode 19. Perfecting perfection.
Perfecting perfection.
You'll see what we're talking
Culture
about.
and Conversations IG.
That's it. Culture and Conversations.
Yeah.
On Instagram. Yep.
All right. So every time we have a guest, bro, like I told you before when we talked on the phone, we try to. We're going to talk about how what we want to talk about. We talk about manhood, and as you can see, we're going to try to infuse manhood in everything that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And however, it is not only about manhood, it's manhood's role or manhood's contribution to what everybody's got going on.
Sure.
This is an attempt for us to do our part, for the most part. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And if we can't control everything, we're at least going to concentrate on something we can control, which is our contribution.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
What I want you to do right now is I'll just let you know every episode, our guests, we have a segment where you talk specifically to the young person that's listening. I'm going to give you a scenario, right?
Okay.
Had a young person listening right now, they may be wondering if college is for them.
Okay, great.
They may also be wondering, all the things that their parents or family members wanted them to do, they don't see it happening.
Sure.
But they are, running the risk of being a family disappointment.
I got you.
And also, they're very, very smart, but they're having a rough time in college, and now they don't think they're college material, but they know they're smart.
Sure.
Right? And so, even younger, they know they're smart, but they're not really good, quote-unquote, middle school material, high school material, all of these materials, right? So what would you say to those young people, that young man and young woman, and try to be as specific as possible, because sometimes when we get real specific, that's when it hit home, right? So talk to that young man and talk to that young woman about what you think they should be doing or your perspective on their situation.
Sure. I think the first thing you've got to do is ask yourself the most important question of your existence. Who's telling you these negative stories in your head?
Okay.
So you're trying to pursue your life's ambitions, your life's goals, and you're developing a sense of what those things are while you're in school. So you're being told that the academic path of going to college is what you need to do, but you feel that you're not good enough at that.
Correct.
Who told you that? Have you put your effort into pursuing it as fully as you possibly can? One of the things I had to be brutally honest with myself about as I got older, but still was a younger man, was that I didn't know enough about life to be making some of the statements that I was making so absolutely about myself.
Right.
I still had the opportunity to, grow up a lot and to pursue these different goals that I had set for myself. So what I want to tell people, just in a positive sense, and this is a great way to kind of wrap this up, is we've heard a lot about dominion and all these different things. I came at it from a Christian perspective. I want to give you one more piece from a Christian perspective.
Okay.
Do you understand, young person, who you actually are? God made you.
For sure.
Not Jamison, nobody else around you, not your parents. Your parents didn't make you. Your parents conceived you, but God made you.
Correct.
The God of the universe, the infinite God that we describe in Scripture, the one that's omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, the one that is all-loving, He made you.
Okay.
He took time out of His eternal schedule to make you. He took time and thought about your existence and said, there's a purpose and a plan for your life that I want to vest you with and give you responsibility and stewardship of carrying out. Now, when you think about who made you, and you think about what you must be as a result of that being making you, now you got to ask yourself some serious questions. Are you doing all you can do to fulfill that goal and that dream and that ambition? Or have you been just taking it easy?
Doing your 50%.
Doing your 50%. And because you broke a little bit of a sweat, you called it 100. How bad do you want to be successful? Right now, we're talking about manhood, and that's part of being a man is challenging the people we love around us lovingly to do better. And I never forget, my dad told me some of the hardest advice. His name's Frank Smallwood in Morven, Georgia. And he told me one day after I came back from an award ceremony where I got some money from scholarships and stuff. He looked at me in the back of the car, and he said, "Do you think that's the best you could have done?" Right after I just got trophies and certificates and money and scholarships and stuff, he's like, "That's the best you can do."
That's a good crotch kick, though.
Yeah, that's like I was mad for a bit. I was like, man, I can't believe he didn't say well, job well done. He didn't say, he didn't say any of that. Because why? He saw potential in me. And I think that's what I would challenge that young person to do is that you're going to go through life trying to discover what it is that you want to do. But make sure you have a path that leads to practical success. Meaning, you got to pay bills one day.
Straight up.
You got to work and be able to take care of yourself.
Straight up.
Now, that's just talking about the minimal. I'm not talking about now you're talking about balling out where you got a big house and big car and you got all the kids.
You got a pool guy?
You got a pool guy, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not a shared pool, but a pool guy that comes by and fixes it and works on your pool. So now you got to ask yourself, is the path that you're on in life going to lead you to the things that you want? Because you may not want that lavish lifestyle now, which is cool. But if you think that you're going to stumble into success by being lazy, not going to happen. I don't care what you do. I don't care whether it's the music route. I don't care whether it's academics, or I don't care whether it's sports. You're going to have to work really hard to be successful. And if you are somebody who comes from a group of people, African Americans, black folk, who live in a country that has systematically and historically disadvantaged them in many ways, you're going to have to work extra hard. So tap into what God put into you in terms of your potential. Don't settle for what you're telling yourself in this negative story in your head. Don't settle for anybody else's negative story. Sometimes you have to prove the people closest to you that love you wrong. And you have to show them that you can actually do more than they thought you were capable of. And you can also do that for yourself, prove yourself wrong that I can do more than I thought I was capable of. And I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in the life of a lot of people who are doing amazing things. And that's part of what Culture and Conversation highlights is that a lot of people who were told a lot of negative things, they're seeing amazing results in their life because they're persevering and they're carrying out that destiny that God has for them. So just think about who you are, think about who made you, and then dig deep and get to work, and you will be successful. I don't care what path you pick, but make sure you're not picking a path of convenience, but you're picking a path of purpose.
Whoever's listening, I hope that was for you. And if it wasn't for you, you can take something from it and give it to somebody who need it. Hopefully, you take advantage of what was said. True. You got any response to
it? Same thing, just to compliment it. Same thing I say every time we log out, man. Just be you. Be true to who you are. Don't be afraid to be that. Nobody can do you better than you. Right. And even if you try to be somebody else, eventually who you are is going to come out anyway. So you might as well just stay through and through with that anyway.
Straight up, man. One of the things that I try to let people understand is make sure you concentrate more on your assignment than on your age.
That's it.
I think a lot of us have been told we're too whatever to do whatever, and you have to be very strategic in how you let other people put their fear on you and call it love.
That's it.
A lot of people have been disappointed in this life. They've tried their best, or they've been convinced that they tried their best, and then put their 100%. But then when they come to you with their failures or their mismanaged attempts, they project their failures upon you, but they call it looking out for you.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
I can't do it, so you can't do it.
Right. And so if you're listening right now, man, it's a difference between advice and just adding a vice.
That's it.
You know what I mean? So you just got to be very careful, be very strategic. And I think what's going to help a lot of young people and people of all ages, start being responsible for the people you listen to. I think we're going to a place in our society where we can no longer say they lied to me.
That's it.
I really think we're getting to a spiritual responsibility level to the point where no longer that is going to be tolerated. They lied to me and they told me I couldn't do it.
That's it.
I think we're going to be good, and Manhood Mindset is saying, as a contribution to our community, we're going to have to start being responsible for who we believed, not who lied to us.
That's it.
And it's a difference between somebody describing you and you thinking that's your definition. Yeah. Just because somebody's saying, "Oh, you failed at that, you're a failure," that's their description. That's not your definition.
That's it.
And so I think a lot of us, a little bit more ownership, not blame. It's a difference between blame and ownership. I think if we take a lot more ownership in our potential and in our assignment and not necessarily our circumstances, I think we'll progress at least a little bit. I can't promise it's going to solve problems. I can't promise that your life going to be easier.
That's it.
But I can at least promise that you don't want to see what it looks like when you stop trying.
That's it.
that's all I can really tell you, man. So, Jamison, you got any closing remarks, any announcements before we roll? Any announcements, anything you got coming up?
Just quickly, man, thank you for, obviously, you gentlemen for giving me this opportunity to be a part of your platform. I appreciate that. Anytime you guys need me to come down and do anything to help support your show, I'd be more than happy to do so.
For sure.
So thank you again for this opportunity. And just quickly, check for Culture and Conversations.
For sure.
That's on Instagram and Facebook.
For sure.
If you want to send me an email, cultureandconversations@gmail.com. We as black people, we like to cut the S's off of stuff, but it's Culture and Conversations. Just
stab at the culture.
I know I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I have to re-record, so I'm like, how did I cut the S's off like I'm Magic Johnson? But no, just check us out, man. We're putting out great content, Culture and Conversations.
Right.
If you can subscribe in iTunes. You can find it in the Apple podcast section of the iPhone world. Right. There's an app for that, all that stuff. You can subscribe on Google Play Music.
Wow.
So you can it's out there. It's lit. So we want you to be a part of what we do. And if you want to be on the show and you think you got a great story to tell, reach out. cultureandconversations@gmail.com. And I check my social media, so I interact with people. You hit me up, you reach out to me, I'll be sure to get back to you.
You know, a lot of people may not understand. You are an alumni of Georgia Southern. What was your major in undergrad?
I was a computer science major in undergrad.
See, a lot of people think, well, no, I'm an IT guy. I ain't finna get into radio. I ain't finna get into podcasting. He was a computer science and IT person.
Computer science guy, man. And, and I'm a senior software engineer by day.
See?
And that's what I do, so...
You are more than your profession, ladies and gentlemen. You got all types of purposes. You got more than one purpose. Mm-hmm. Just because you majored in something that's not what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. No. And the only thing, you just invested time in doing that. So do that and then explore your gifts.
Yeah, and I'm not scared of the time I have to make, the commitment I have to make. I'm not going to talk too much trash, but just to encourage people. I come home and I record these episodes in the evening time at night. I don't do this as my 9 to 5. I go to work. I work 40 hours a week, and I work on culture and conversation with the rest of the time I've got.
That's real.
And I'm growing it organically from every episode that I reach out to somebody and book, all the way down to publishing the episode myself and paying for the hosting. I don't expect anybody to give me a platform. I'm trying to build one, so I'm doing it. I'm doing it with the spare time I have, and it's been a blessing. It really has.
We got a subscriber, Gregory Shred. This is my cousin, G Money, man. He said, "That's right. You have to work hard to be successful."
That's
right
it.
On.
That's it.
So I appreciate the G Money. And also too, I want to give a shout out to my family today. We had some very sad news. We lost our uncle today.
Sorry to hear that, man.
My uncle A.D. Bell, very strong man's man. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The epitome of manhood. He taught me a lot. It was he was him, he was himself. And what you saw is what you got. He didn't waver. He was himself. He was consistent, and he did what he did, and he helped, and he had a really, really good heart. Yeah. And I can still feel his presence. I thought I was going to be sadder. And I will, Sure. But shout out to the family. Shout out to everybody in the Bell family and the ATL. Shout out to all my cousins. We're going to make it. Yeah. We're going to make it. So appreciate it, Unc. We love you, man. So, Truth, you got anything else?
I still got these husky puppies.
Ha!
They're only a week old though, so I'm taking pre-sales right now.
Straight up.
Like they're not ready to go yet. They'll be ready May 4th. But if you want to hold one, you know what I mean, like so I don't sell it, so you can get it May 4th. It's $125 deposit. For sure.
Just let you all know. If you are interested in the show and being interviewed on the show, email me at mchristopherpugh@gmail.com. If you're trying to book anybody to come to your school, any type of school counseling event, or you want some mentoring services to talk to young men and young women or anything like that, if you want someone to speak at your college or your church or anywhere where y'all got a budget, let me know. So you can email me directly at mchristopherpugh@gmail.com. And also too, we have, and everybody may know I'm a huge Dungeon Family fan, right? We have none other than Dungeon Family's own Big Rube.
Oh wow!
He's going to be down 420, April 20th. All right, at Georgia Southern University. Yeah. He's going to be in the IT building, auditorium, 7:00. He's going to be talking about hip hop pedagogy. Okay. And the Southern influence on hip hop. Now, I've heard him speak in 2015.
Oh wow! I'm supposed to send you that video too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll definitely rap about that. And the speech he gave, he pretty much, it was a class, and people didn't understand. I didn't expect it. I thought, he was going to talk about, how he was rapping with Outkast, and he did do that. But man, he was talking about the Civil War in there. He was talking about different Revolutionary Wars and all these other stuff, and the Southern dialect and the Southern influence, and the Southern contribution. And you remember that situation when the Dungeon Family went up north to the Social Wars, I believe. Yeah. And Dre went on the stage and said the South definitely got something to say. He was there. He was on stage when all of that stuff actually took place. Wow. So he brought that culture to us, and he and also too, he went to the Random Acts of Poetry, and Random Acts of Poetry performed in front of him. Mm-hmm. He gave him some feedback, and the man just sat there and he talked to a lot of people for like an hour after the show. Oh, wow. You know what I mean? So very cool dude. We're gonna have some meet and greet with him, and he's gonna also talk to one of the classes on campus. So cool. Yes, sir. So ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much for tuning in. This has been Manhood Mindset on WBGS 91.9 The Buzz. I'm your host, Big Chris from Ellenwood, Georgia. Shout out to everybody back in Ellenwood, East Side Atlanta, everybody from Riverdale, College Park, East Point, the West Side, the North Side, everybody in Georgia. If you're in Atlanta, you got more crime and traffic. Everybody else, you know what I'm saying? You still folks, man. Ain't nothing different. We all South, man. It's all red clay, man. So thank you so much, Jamison. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, man.
I really appreciate it.
Stand up.
Yeah, so what now?
Morven, Georgia stand
Morven, Georgia. Where is it located?
Down there in Valdosta.
Brooks
County.
I can dig it. So ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much again. We really appreciate everybody's contribution. And we'll be back next week, man. Manhood Mindset. We out.
Dope.
You
guys got a show, man.
Yeah, that was a dope conversation.
Hey, good people. Thank y'all so much for tuning in.
Perspective, man.
And we're going to get it in. We're about to sign off, so I'll holler at y'all later.